why you feel exhausted even when nothing's wrong. There's a strange kind of suffering most people carry, not the suffering of pain but of prediction. You know the feeling. You're lying in bed, the room is quiet, nothing is tangibly wrong, and yet your chest is tight, your thoughts race, and your body feels like it's bracing for impact. What? Because your mind isn't in the room, it's somewhere in a future that doesn't exist yet, rehearsing disasters that may never arrive. This is the invisible weight of worry, a psychological ghost dragging you through timelines you haven't lived. Eckhart Tolle names this for what it is: psychological time. Not the clock on your wall but the clock in your head. Worry doesn't come from what's happening now. It comes from your mind projecting itself forward into scenarios, or spiraling backward into regret and memory. He asks the simplest and most piercing question: where is the problem right now? Not tomorrow, not yesterday, right now. And almost always there isn't one. That question is a knife. It cuts through the illusion of urgency we keep breathing life into. But the mind doesn't let go so easily. Worry pretends to be preparation. It masquerades as control. You think if you just think hard enough, if you imagine every bad thing that could happen, maybe you'll be ready. But that's not readiness. That's rumination. And your nervous system pays the price. Chronic worry floods the body with stress hormones not meant for long-term use. You burn energy for a war that hasn't started. You lose sleep for conversations that haven't happened. You flinch from ghosts. The anxiety feels real, because the body believes the story the mind is telling. Here's the paradox. You're always in the present, but your attention is never here. The mind pulls you into its theater, a mental projection of past wounds and future threats, and you forget that none of it is happening. This dislocation from the now is the root of so much suffering. You feel tired not because your day was hard, but because your mind traveled 100 miles and never came home. You feel anxious not because something's wrong, but because your system has been tricked into thinking it needs to defend against a future that hasn't arrived. This is what psychologists call anticipatory anxiety, and it works like a self-reinforcing loop. The more you worry, the more your brain builds neural pathways that make worrying your default. It becomes a habit, a reflex. Even when life is peaceful, your mind searches for the next thing to fear. You don't even notice it happening anymore. That's why the most dangerous thoughts are not the loud, obvious ones, but the subtle, habitual ones that define your baseline. Eckhart doesn't label worry as bad or wrong. He sees it as a misdirection of awareness. Worry is simply what happens when you abandon the present. It's not the presence of danger but the absence of now. The solution then isn't to fix every possible outcome, but to interrupt the pattern, to notice when you've left reality and wandered into the fiction of time. When you do that, when you wake up to the fact that the movie you're watching in your mind is just a projection, that's when the spell breaks. Because once you see that most of what you suffer from isn't real, not yet and maybe never, something in you exhales. You reclaim a part of yourself that worry had hijacked. The body unfreezes. The breath deepens. The present moment, once blurry and ignored, becomes clear again. And in that clarity there is peace. Not the peace of everything being perfect, but the peace of no longer being lost. And now that you've seen through the illusion, the next question becomes, why does worry keep coming back? And how do you stop feeding it? Section 1. You're not reacting to life, you're reacting to thought. You can be sitting in a quiet room, no one speaking, nothing moving, and yet, inside you, it feels like the world is on fire. Your chest tightens. Your mind races. You're restless, alert, preparing. But for what? There's no threat, no voice shouting at you, no danger creeping behind the curtains. What you're feeling isn't reality, it's a reaction to a projected image inside your head. And this is the secret no one tells you. Most of your stress, fear, and worry isn't caused by what's happening. It's caused by what you think might happen. You're not reacting to the world, you're reacting to your mind's movie about the world. The body never lies. It's always here, always now. But the mind travels. It loops, it rehearses, it rewinds, it catastrophizes. Your breath anchors you in the present moment, but your thoughts try to drag you across decades in a single second. And this tug-of-war, body-rooted, mind-racing, creates tension. That's why you feel like you're splitting in two. Your nervous system is trying to respond to a situation it doesn't see, only imagines. You feel like you're drowning, but there's no water. Just the illusion of drowning in thought. And yet the panic is real because your body doesn't know the difference between what's actual and what's vividly imagined. Think about how many times you've lost sleep over scenarios that never happened. You fight battles in your head that never reach the outside world. You replay conversations, imagining better responses. You brace for failures that never arrive. All the while, your body believes you. Your heart speeds up, your stomach churns, your muscles tense. This is the cost of psychological time, the loop where your consciousness leaves this moment and chases phantoms into memory or fantasy. And every time you do, you feed worry. Not because the world is attacking you, but because your mind is simulating the attack, and your system prepares accordingly. Worry is not a flaw in your thinking. It's a misplacement of attention. You think you're being vigilant, staying prepared. But what you're really doing is rehearsing pain. And that rehearsal has consequences. Over time, you begin to live in maintenance mode, where your entire life becomes about preventing disaster instead of embracing experience. You're always fixing, bracing, anticipating. You don't actually live, you just manage potential collapse. That's why so many people feel exhausted even when nothing is wrong. Because their internal world is one long fire drill, alarms blaring but no smoke. Eckhart Tolle doesn't tell you to fight your thoughts. He doesn't say you should stop worrying by force. He shows you something far stranger, that worry only exists when you're not here. It's a ghost born of time, past guilt or future fear. And the moment you fully return to presence, the ghost vanishes. Not because you solved the problem, but because the problem never lived in the now to begin with. You start to see how most of what controls you was never real, just convincing. And this awareness becomes the pivot point, the silent realization that breaks the loop without a single battle. So the next time you feel that invisible pressure rising, when your mind starts sprinting through dark corridors of what if, ask yourself something simple. Is this happening, or am I thinking it into being? That one question pulls the curtain back. That one pause reintroduces you to this moment. And in this moment you're safe. Your body knows it. Your breath proves it. The danger was just a shape your mind painted across an empty wall. And once you stop staring at it, the wall is just a wall again. You've now seen the illusion for what it is. But illusion has layers. And in the next section we'll dive deeper into how presence doesn't require belief, but direct perception. Let's go there. Section 2. Awareness is the exit door. You don't silence the storm by yelling at the sky. You let it pass. That's what most people get wrong about worry. They try to argue with it, fix it, shut it down with force. But worry doesn't shrink when you fight it. It feeds on attention. The more you try to solve it like a puzzle, the deeper you sink into the maze. But then something different happens. One quiet moment when, instead of battling the thought, you simply notice it. No resistance. Just recognition. And in that tiny pause, something shifts. You're not tangled in it anymore. You're watching it. That shift, subtle as it is the beginning of freedom. The voice in your head is sneaky. It doesn't shout from a distance. It speaks with your tone, borrows your vocabulary, slips into your thoughts like a friend who knows all your weaknesses. And because it sounds like you believe it. I'm not good enough. This is going to go wrong. They probably don't like me. These aren't just ideas, they feel like truth. But they're not. They're just echoes, fragments of old fear, past pain, future control, looping like a playlist no one ever told you was on shuffle. Once you realize this voice isn't you, you stop obeying it. You stop letting it drive. There's a profound difference between having a thought and being the thought. Most people never notice that line. They say, I'm anxious, not, I'm having an anxious thought. They say, I'm a failure, not, a thought just told me I failed. This difference, between identification and observation, is the foundation of awareness. The second you realize you're watching the thought rather than drowning in it, you're free. Not fully. Not forever. But in that moment, yes, you've broken the illusion. You don't have to conquer the spiral. You just have to see it as a spiral, not a reality. You might think awareness is passive, just noticing what's happening. But it's the opposite. It's one of the most powerful inner movements a human can make. When you pause and recognize a thought, not analyze it, not debate it, just see it, you're reclaiming your space. The thought might still be there, whispering doubts or fears, but suddenly you're not under its spell. You don't owe it your energy. You don't have to build your day around its drama. You can let it pass like a cloud in the sky, noticed, acknowledged, and released. That's not passive. That's mastery. People often think growth means they never worry anymore. But the truth is, the real growth is catching it sooner. What used to spiral for days now unravels in minutes. What used to own your mood for hours now flickers and fades before it grips. You become quicker at spotting the trap. You start hearing the tone of that inner voice, how it talks in absolutes, how it tries to predict doom. And with each recognition, the voice loses power. Not because it's gone, but because you don't confuse it for reality anymore. You're not trapped in the loop, you're watching the loop. So the next time you hear that familiar mental buzz, the one that says, something's wrong, even when everything is calm, don't rush to fix or analyze it. Just pause. Notice it. No resistance. No judgment. That pause is the exit door. That breath between reaction and awareness. That's where you reclaim your peace. And once you start noticing more often than spiraling, you realize you've already begun the shift. You've already stepped outside the mind's cage. In the next section, we'll go deeper into what that inner shift really means, when you stop being the voice and start being the awareness behind it. Let's go further. Section 3. You were never meant to live in your head. There is a difference between thinking and being trapped in thought. Most people never notice it because they've spent years, maybe decades, building their identity inside the noise. You were taught to analyze every word you said, anticipate every danger before it comes, and mentally rehearse every scenario that might go wrong. But that was survival, not wisdom. Somewhere along the way, worry disguised itself as responsibility, and thinking turned into a full-time job. But you weren't born to live this way. You didn't arrive into this world overthinking your breath or second-guessing your laughter. That voice in your head? It came later. And it stayed because no one told you that you could turn it down. Worry is seductive because it feels like action. It gives you the illusion that you're solving something, protecting yourself, staying ahead of disaster. But you're not. You're just spinning your wheels in the same mental loop. What if becomes a daily soundtrack? But nothing changes. The future stays uncertain, the past stays the same, and your nervous system keeps bracing for a punch that never lands. And here's the trick. Your thoughts never needed your obedience. Just because a thought appears doesn't mean you have to salute it. But you were conditioned to trust the voice implicitly. You inherited a habit of believing everything it says, even when it hurts you. Sometimes the most rebellious thing you can do is stop listening. Not out of denial, but out of clarity. You realize the volume in your head isn't truth, it's programming. And you can unplug it. You can observe the chatter the way you'd observe a radio left on in an empty room. A stream of words that don't need a response. This isn't about escaping thought or becoming mindless. It's about knowing when thought is useful, and when it's just running old loops. You don't have to earn your peace. You just have to remember where to find it. Stillness isn't something you have to create. It's already there. Always has been. Underneath the commentary, beneath the running monologue and the what-ifs and should-haves, there's a silence. It doesn't argue or shout. Just waits. It's not fragile. It's not elusive. It's you before the fear. You before the mental armor. But peace feels unfamiliar at first. When you've lived so long in high alert, stillness can feel boring, even wrong. You might mistake calm for emptiness or silence for laziness. That's how deep the conditioning goes. You learn to trust noise more than presence. But the more you return to that quiet, the more you remember, this is home. This remembering isn't dramatic. It won't arrive like a lightning bolt. It creeps in slowly, like the sun warming your skin after years of cold. At first, it's subtle, a breath that doesn't come with tension, a morning where your mind isn't racing before you open your eyes. You might still worry. You might still fall into thought. But something's changed. You know now you're not broken. You were just taught to live in a cage made of ideas. And now you've seen the door. You've touched the handle. You know what it feels like to step outside, even if only for a second. And once you've tasted that kind of freedom, you never fully forget it. So next time the mental noise kicks up, the doubt, the dread, the compulsive need to analyze, let it be. Let the storm pass without inviting it in. You don't have to argue with it. You don't have to fix it. You just have to stop becoming it. That's what Tolle meant when he said freedom isn't about controlling the mind, it's about disidentifying from it. You don't conquer the voice. You just stop being the voice. And from that space, everything begins to change. In the next section, we'll bring it all together, the awareness, the presence, the remembering, into the quiet realization that you've been free all along. You just needed to see it. Let's finish this.